Let's go. Warming up. Yes, I know it's already rapid. Oh wow.
Yep. So we're gonna give people time to join the live stream because that's how live streams work. But if you are watching the recorded version of this video in the future, relative to us, give us a moment while we get through and get started and wait for people to join. You can fast forward about 5 minutes on average. I feel very obligated to maintain the chatter because I've watched some of our openings and like it's really just
Waiting.
yeah, I know. So sorry, people.
So that's what you get for a recorded live stream and not an edited recorded thing.
Yeah, we're hardcore that way because we only
Hardcore
do stuff
translates
as
to
live.
no staff.
Yes, no staff, no post prod. So yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, I'm still trying to multitask. Wait.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm just waiting for the feed to pop up. I see it on YouTube, so that at least we know is running. And now we're sharing it to Twitter.
Isha Twitter. So it's been another very busy week, which I feel like we've been saying every week for a while now. But busy, it could be a good thing. It means that there's work, and so be appreciative. Yeah, or maybe it's also with this the fact that we also have no like real respite from things, and it's just well, working at home and then still at home. And then,
Yeah.
so I wonder if that's a factor. So like the the nature of work ends up being more powerful because we can't do anything else. I mean, props to people who have the determination to still travel in these times. No, no, no.
The fly is moving.
Are you happy? Yeah. So, oh, Toby. Oh, Toby. But yes, it's Baduy Pride is a live stream show, so give us a moment. We let people have time to join after we notify them also that we're live. As much as it helps to always like and subscribe for updates, you don't
Admittedly,
always see those updates.
yeah, and admittedly, even like I'm subscribed to certain groups or channels,
Mm-hmm.
I don't get the updates
Yep, yep. That's the nature of the game.
because they've stopped caring for subscribers and they're now really trying to do, um, if you're featured, people then watch you. So
Yeah, I mean, like even for Facebook pages, only a fraction of people who like your page actually see your content on a regular basis,
uh,
and the newsfeed algorithm is constantly determining, weighing like what to show people, and you're further down the list if you don't
yeah,
engage. So to help with engagement, don't just subscribe, but also comment regularly, like these videos, make sure you didn't turn off the see notifications of live videos feature, which I have done for many people. But hey, if you enjoy the show, we super appreciate it. And of course, if you're able to watch, then be sure to leave a comment to let us know that you're watching. It's a conversation, so we like to have participation from the audience. Huh. And it's Dennis. Hey, Dennis. Thanks
hey
for
Dennis,
joining.
first. Oh my gosh, that's like
That's
such
such
a
a early 2000s YouTube behavior.
yeah.
First,
Oh my gosh, which later translated to pamain
no.
or
First is
add to
just
cart.
first to comment.
Yeah, but yeah, they'd be like the first one to claim it
Oh, okay.
because they'd want to be the first one to grab it.
For people who beat you in auctions.
It's tomorrow. The deadline's tomorrow. I can still make sure it's mine. I guess we might as well start.
All right, sure. We shall start. Okay, I will just roll credits and we'll be back after this brief commercial.
Oh yeah! Really great!
This is Toby.
And this is Rocky.
And if it's your first time here, welcome to Baduy, our little space on the internet where we talk about anything we want.
It's completely unscripted and not entirely accurate, but at least it's honest. Join us as we talk about everything and anything random live.
And if it's not your first time here, thank you so much for joining us again. Oh my gosh.
Awesome intro.
Something's stuck in my throat. You do it. I'll get water.
Hi, we have a show and we're going to talk about things. And today we're talking about nostalgia. Because this whole week we've been talking about things that begin with the letter N. We started with Hiroshima Hex on Monday. We did Nuts on Tuesday. We did the New Mutants on Thursday. And now we're doing nostalgia. And in line with this, our shirts today are these very campy spoof shirts.
Which are good examples of nostalgia.
Yeah, because they play on school affiliations and common things.
Mhm.
So, are you up to helping explain what nostalgia is?
Well, I don't have specifically the definition of nostalgia,
Okay,
but
I would like to think people know what it means.
um, the thing about nostalgia is ultimately nostalgia. Okay, here we go. We have a definition in this article. According to inverse.com, the simplest definition of nostalgia is people's reflection on their cherished memories.
Mm.
This varies from person to person, obviously, but there are some commonalities. Um, Routledge says nostalgia memories tend to have the following characteristics: a social component. For example, nostalgic memories typically involve family members, close friends, or romantic partners.
Mhm.
A personal meaning, which then they can be quite trivial to other people, but for you, they have so much more context.
Okay.
And then they occurred fairly far in the past. So you can't like be nostalgic about yesterday.
Well, I think we can all be nostalgic about life before the pandemic because it feels so far away.
So
But that's
mhm,
interesting in the way they define it. Actually the social component one surprises me.
mhm.
Um, so I wonder if that's true for everyone. If things that make you feel nostalgic, do they almost always involve other people? Can't you be just nostalgic about things you were happy about on your own? But when you think about it, it's normally like, first birthday party
Mhm.
or a particular Christmas gift you opened together with family or a trip. Um, yeah, things that people cite for
I mean,
nostalgia's sake.
there could be personal memories, meaning they're not really tied to others. But I think when it becomes like that, since others can't relate, it doesn't become something of nostalgia. It just becomes a good memory.
Hmm.
Nostalgia is when you can share it with others. We're
That's
in, you
true.
remember that time? And that's where nostalgia starts kicking in.
Mm,
Whereas
mm.
if you do something because you remember a good time, it's just you.
Okay, then that in that
Mm-mm.
sense it makes sense. Okay, and I get that vibe. Like whenever I attend gathering reunions with my high school
Mm-hmm.
batchmates, and that's like the closest group I've probably been with because it was 4 solid years that we were the
Mm-hmm.
pretty much the same. Well, we were in the same class
Yeah.
the whole time. We didn't change in high school. Um, so whenever we're together, it's like always the same darn
The
stories
same
keep coming up
story, the same.
over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, we all know the endings of these
You
stories.
still love listening to it.
Yes,
You
and
still love.
you let it play out and the retelling and you still laugh or you still like, "Oh yeah, yeah," and you throw in
Oh yeah.
what what you remember about it. So, it's yeah, okay, then yeah, I understand now the social
My
component.
nose is like super reacting. Okay, so a 2006 study that used fMRI imaging to monitor participants' brain activity when they were exposed to nostalgia revealed that there were two powerful neural networks, areas of the brain associated with memory
Mm.
and the brain's reward system.
Oh,
So
okay.
those were the two areas that got engaged. And they, to quote them, worked cooperatively. So the more nostalgic something was, the more they unleashed this reward sensations and feeling. Hence, it really felt good to discuss it more.
Hmm. That's interesting. And I wonder if that some sort of a mechanism to encourage recall? I mean, because we always there's always like things that say that you theoretically remember everything you've ever been exposed
Mhm.
to. I mean, or it's stored in your brain,
Yeah.
but accessing those memories is always difficult. So I
Mhm.
wonder if the what we describe to be nostalgia is the brain's way of rewarding memory recall or
Or it
something.
could be, again, part of the evolutionary process of survival, wherein by remembering the good things you did with these people, the more you then feel connected to them,
Mm-mm.
the more you'll make sure you remember those moments and learn from them. So you don't make the same mistakes.
Okay.
So the study continues. They were exploring if nostalgia was a positive or negative emotion, and the earliest days of nostalgia was really identified as just homesickness,
Mm.
remembering where you used to be. And that is actually where the term nostalgia gets its name from. The word was coined by a Swiss medical student, I presume this Johannes Hofer,
Mm.
in his 1866 dissertation,
1688.
1688. Oh my god, my eyes really switched things around. In describing the anxieties of soldiers fighting away from home. He combined the Greek word for homecoming, nostos,
Mm.
with the word for pain, algos.
Because it's homesick. It's home ache. The yearning to be home.
Now, of course, with the modern day, the definition started to change because um, if if you look at it in the past, it was a lot of personal um, life experiences.
Mm-hmm.
But with the modern day, many of our sources of happiness and shared joys and emotional moments are not now limited to just the real events in our lives. They can even evolve media we consume, the shows we watch, the books we read, and then it might even start at first individually, but then becomes a shared nostalgic moment, even if they were never together.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, your nostalgia of reading Dune will, of course, be different from my experience of reading it. But then when you start sharing it, I can connect with it in a certain way.
Okay.
And it allows us both to reach to our past and remember those memories, even if they're two separate events.
Maybe. Hey, and Tristan is on YouTube, and he says the Blues Clues video probably triggered nostalgia in a lot of people. That's
Mm.
true, and it's funny because it just was also a stress of like how cross generational Blues Clues was because like for me for example like I felt things when I saw the video and I was already too old
Mhm.
to like I wasn't in the target demographic for Blues Clues, but I had seen a couple episodes because I had a younger brother or that I had younger siblings and younger cousins, so I was not entirely unfamiliar with it, and then it just it was just interesting. So yeah, there's um it's a good time for it. And speaking of popular culture sort of triggering nostalgia, I
Mhm.
mean, just think about I wonder about the many reactions to the trailer for the new Matrix movie,
Mhm.
where as much as a lot of it is entirely new stuff, new characters, new actors brought into the
Yeah.
franchise, but just the few old things and echoes of things from the core trilogy that was released so long ago
Mhm.
definitely had me feeling a lot of the same like, oh, I remember how excited we all
Mhm.
got. I remember looking for what is the Matrix and then like, ooh, what's in this website? And it was one of the very first like I forgot what they called it at the time. Like it wasn't expanded universe, but uh whatever, something marketing
Yeah.
where it was like including
They basically were going beyond just the world for marketing. They were involving,
yeah,
um,
other platforms.
yes, yes.
And that was those are the years of like super scavenger hunt for things
Mm-mm.
to find out more about the movie. And hey, hello to Renz joining us on YouTube. Thanks for joining. Okay. So yeah. So what else were you able to dig up to kick off our nostalgia discussion?
So I was digging more for articles about the power of nostalgia.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, um, the basic idea that many articles talk about is that nostalgia has ultimately a restorative and positive pro-social effect.
Mm.
Restorative because it allows you to reform and strengthen memories.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I remember doing this. Oh yeah, that's the time I was doing that. So you're like reinforcing what you recall.
Yes. Okay.
Um,
I believe that.
and then there's the pro-social aspect because you then start offering information. You then start trying to see, do you connect with that too?
Mm.
And then when you both say yes, you start finding more ways to connect. So in many ways, you are in some way, I guess you could say, effortlessly now opening up to each other because there is that filter of
The shared
yeah,
experience.
I'm opening up to you about how much I love Doctor Who, so it doesn't feel too personal. But surprisingly, I'm like, yeah, I remember I watched that episode when I broke up with my ganyan ganyan. So I'm already actually offering more without realizing it.
And Carlo joined us on Facebook and likes our shirts. Hey,
Hey,
Carlo.
the shirts were a gift from our good friend John.
Oh, we can talk
Um,
about that in a nostalgic recall moment.
yes, because it was a surprising gift. We
Yes.
weren't expecting it.
And it was a Yale party.
And it was such an awesome gift that we're so sad we cannot find more of it if we wanted to buy newer ones that fit better.
Mm-mm. And then yeah, but this is, oh my god, this is, we've had these almost for the length of our relationship.
Yes,
It's funny.
It's
It's funny.
very old.
So this is officially our very first couple shirt.
Yeah,
It's our
think
it's our
about
it's
it.
our first couple shirt.
Yeah,
So
because
yeah.
our first quote unquote couple shirt was not matching shirts. In
Mm.
this case, they're not matching, but they were meant to be worn together.
Yes.
But
yes.
we had these were the shirts we wore when we first met, so we kind of like started wearing them more often.
Nostalgia. So but yeah, I get that.
Mhm.
Like when you, yeah, my classic example is reunions with whether longtime friends, school friends, whatnot,
Mhm.
and how it becomes this weird, like if we're metaphorically, it is a fire that you kindle together, and then
Mhm.
all of you start throwing stuff onto it to build it, to make it burn brighter,
Mhm.
and that helps everybody remember things together,
Yes.
and then we all walk away with a refreshed memory of the crazy stuff that happened when we were
Now,
kids.
now the funny thing about nostalgia is it's not necessarily always accurate.
Oh yes,
You
yes.
you might
Mandela effect
you,
still applies.
you might find yourself remembering, oh, I really really enjoyed that movie, and then later on you watch it again. I like this movie. There are those moments because sometimes the emotional effect of how you felt about it overwhelms the actual experience.
Yes,
A lot of people,
literally rose tinted
yeah,
glasses.
and a lot of people even talk about how, oh, I really love this dish or I really like this chocolate, and then when they eat it, yun na yun,
Mm-mm.
yeah, and it just shows how the subjective level of memory is more powerful in terms of how it made you feel, rather than what information you really stored.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, to our viewers, by the way, this is a interactive live stream. Feel free to send in comments, to share your thoughts, to ask questions. We will incorporate them as much as possible when we can, if we can, because as always, we are no experts. We just want to do this because the pandemic is driving us crazy and we need to connect with people.
Yeah, so we're just, we're talking to a camera, hoping that little words appear on the screen in the form of your comments.
So going back to Tristan's comment, the Blues Clues video, you
Okay.
mentioned you didn't connect with it as much as others because
Well-
you were older when you watched it.
Yeah, and I didn't exactly watch a lot of it.
Okay.
Like it was something that I watched over my brother's shoulder or someone else's shoulder. Like it was stuff that you'd see in the background, and thus I'm aware of Blue's Clues, but yeah, it was like not. I can't necessarily say I grew up on Blue's Clues. Um, Ooh, Tristan shares he loved the movie Xanadu as a kid, but now finds it unwatchable. I can understand this. I made Toby watch Xanadu, and like Toby, you must experience Xanadu, and oh my gosh, yes,
So I've never seen an episode of Blues Clues.
this was fascinating to me.
I've never connected with the show. I've had some people say I look like the first host. don't know how that's valid. I've had a lot of people say I look like certain people. I think the only one I agree with is two, but I won't mention them anymore. Um,
Comment below if you want to know. No?
However, I did listen to his music.
Yeah, because and that started as a funny like, hey, did you know what happened to the host of Blue's Clues? And like, what? And then Toby shows me that he became this alternative musician,
Mm-hmm.
and then it was Steve and the Burns, or what's it called again? What was
Yeah.
his band?
Okay. Here. Ah, there. Steve Burns and the
And the
Struggle.
Struggle, Steve Burns and the
Yeah.
Struggle. Yes, yes. And admittedly, it was like right up my alley in terms of the sort of
Mm-hmm.
alternative music I liked growing up with, which
So it
was
was,
very fascinating.
and it was odd because I just bumped into the music. I didn't really know who he was. It was
Mm.
really more later on as I was like, who is this musician? And oh, he used to host this TV show. So I couldn't connect. And um, now I wonder about the younger people who are seeing the Matrix trailers and going,
Yeah.
what's this? Because for many of them, they were too young to really get into the Matrix when it
Mm-hmm.
came out. Or they saw the movies, but they didn't quite get why it was so awesome. Because admittedly, by the time they watch it, all these wire work effects, all these CG enhancements in movies, these are all normal na.
Yes.
But back when we saw it, barring those who were already into Usha movies and the like, it was groundbreaking.
Yeah.
It was beyond anything you'd expect from a modern day science fiction production.
Mm-hmm.
So the impact would have been very different.
And it's definitely one of those like you don't just remember the movies because the movies, the
Mm-hmm.
further the trilogy went on, were not the greatest things in the world.
Mm-hmm.
But I think a lot of us remember the feeling of
Mm-hmm.
watching that movie for the first time. And I remember being in the theater.
Mm-hmm.
I even remember that we had crappy seats because it was super packed and we
Mm-hmm.
like had to take whatever seats we could. But it was the early days of Glorieta reserve seating, so we
Mm-hmm.
could actually reserve
Mm-hmm.
seats. And so I remember being like almost on the towards the right, closer to the front. It's like it's bad when you sit towards the
Mm-hmm.
front. And then it was really that. It was like, oh my god, what? Oh, and then I remember we were late.
Mm-hmm.
See, things you remember. I remember we were late because it was already like Carrie Ann Moss
Mm-hmm.
running. So
Escaping on the
yeah,
rooftop.
it's already the escape. So we
Yeah.
missed like the very very beginning of it. Um, but it's all that and that. So just watching the trailer for the new movie yesterday,
Hey, Mitch.
super got me like feeling a bit of
Mm-hmm.
that, and that got me excited to watch the movie.
So me, the memories that it unlocked, oddly, was less the movies, and as much as I did love the movies, and yes, while the second and third movie are wonky in certain ways, they were still such a feast to
Mm,
enjoy.
mm.
They still had so much story to tell.
Because no one ever takes the freeway.
I still, however, found myself remembering the video game
Oh my
because it
gosh.
was one of the few video games where you literally could hack the game.
Mm.
And if you hacked it, you can unlock certain special things to do. But then you had to learn to do it
And the story was still an extension
of the second
of
and
the
between the second and third movie.
yeah, that it nicely connected. And if you finish the game, it provided material that made sense in the
Yes.
movies.
And when you see them in the movies, oh, so that's why they show up because that happened in the game.
Yeah, and it wasn't even just set in between because
Mm.
there are a lot of stuff now that they squeeze in some form of expanded media
Yes.
in between other stuff. This one, it felt really connected. It made things very seamless and wow.
In many ways, there's a lot of theories even now that the new trailer is now reinforcing that um, Enter the Matrix or Into the Matrix
Enter the Matrix the game. Yeah.
was canon.
I always believed it was.
I mean, there were statements that it was canon, but in that game, Morpheus was gunned down,
Mm.
and that's why he's not in this movie.
Ba-ba-bum.
So, we will probably have a full episode on Matrix eventually, but for now, let's go back to nostalgia.
So okay, and I guess we can talk about we should probably start touching on how we most encounter nostalgia, which is not just, reunions and other gatherings,
Mhm.
but it has become a very common marketing
Yes.
tactic in a way. We can start maybe on the just commercials
Mhm.
level, because especially in Asia, or dare I say Southeast Asia, oh my God, there's a lot of like emo cry commercials.
Okay.
That's just that.
So
That is my technical term for it.
so we'll start with the generic, not the geeky.
Yeah, because then we can talk about big remakes.
So um, so there's emotional marketing.
Mm-hmm.
Wherein you try to market by hitting their heartstrings, by triggering their emotions, by getting them to feel a certain thing, and then associating that with your product.
Yes.
So a lot of that, well, I don't speak with as any expert, but I think a lot of the earlier versions of that had to do with connecting with what mom used to cook or what you
Mm.
used to have at home. Because the idea is you've all moved out and you've all done
Oh my
everything
God, I
else.
suddenly have the I remember yesterday when the world was so young.
You know?
Sometimes, sometimes it
But a lot
grandpa.
of food or food related stuff was, like mom used to make.
That's true.
Um, a lot of
That's an
them
emotional hook.
would connect to traditions, just like apple pie and Christmas and this and that. But then later on, people started to realize they didn't have to limit themselves to that.
Mm-mm.
So suddenly you'd have commercials that sort of try to make you remember the first time you had a breakup and then connecting it to the ad or the the time you used to spend with friends. And it didn't help that there was a lot of modern music that started coming out embracing the same idea.
Mm.
In many ways, that's why Eraserheads got super popular because it literally was the type of music that you cannot help but think, oh my God, I remember my friends when I
Yes.
listen to these music. For people earlier, it goes even further back to stuff like Alanis Morissette, wherein, oh, I remember I used to have this breakup, and this was the song for all our breakups, or even earlier Green Day, um, the singles movie, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, so I think and the like the push the push you can get to for nostalgia and marketing really goes along the lines of recreating or depicting scenes that are common.
Mm-mm.
They're common life experiences. And then once they get to that point where you put yourself in the commercial avatar shoes that, oh yeah, I know how that feels like,
Mm-mm.
then boom, they got you. Then they're able to play on the nostalgia piece,
Yes.
whether it is, using music of the time or depicting very familiar scenes, um or yeah, or actually a shift to like storytelling, more
Mm-mm.
storytelling in commercials as opposed to buy my product, buy my product, buy my product. Before it was a lot of loud,
Yes.
literally louder, jarring visuals and stuff. But then you see more and more storytelling elements, especially now that advertising has expanded into things like YouTube, where you're no longer controlled by TV regulations,
Mm-mm.
where you're in a people may willingly choose to consume your content, or even like if a commercial hits the right heartstrings,
Mm-hmm.
then people will share the video of a commercial with other people.
Just,
Whereas
just adjustment.
before, yeah, before you would just catch it on TV and that
Yeah.
was it, and maybe talk about it over lunch the
Yeah.
next day. Now there's literally a way to continue to carry the message of a commercial and add your weight on it.
I'm really I will read it out because you look like you're not facing the camera.
Yeah, I'm super off to the side.
Because it's like your body's pointing there.
Now it's weirder than before.
There, that's better. See, but you're still pointing away from the camera. Anyway, it's annoying me.
It's the problem of a live stream.
The problem of having no staff. Okay. So when it comes to nostalgia and marketing, so from the original trying to hit touchstones, trying to hit memories that people can relate with, it progressed to trying to imply that the brand is one of those memories.
Yes.
So it would be you miss coming home and it's raining and mom scolds you. But oh, remember that time afterwards you had Milo. Yung mga ganong pa-segue.
Mhm.
Or you remember celebrating Christmas and missing the family. But then, oh, you remember then you had this delicious meal with the cup of noodles and it made you think of home. So it was this attempt to ride with the emotion.
Mhm. Mhm.
Later on, and this was a spin off that happens thanks to the fact of time passing, the brands then did become actually nostalgia.
Mm.
So you have now brands showing, oh look, oh, that's what our logo looked like 20 years
Oh
ago.
yes, I've literally participated in a
And
campaign
then
like
we
that.
move to forward, but then we're just reminding, see, we've been there with you all along, so it's no
Mhm.
longer just lying. But it's still lying because they weren't really the same brand back then. They weren't really following the same characteristics and virtues.
Whoa.
In the most modern sense, this is why memes are so strong.
Mm.
Because memes are all about those hidden recollections and connections that you will get that others won't.
It's funny how people build entire relationships with parang with meme videos and imagery and not know
Mhm.
the source.
Yes.
Like there are so many now pieces of content that people only know as memes and not know where they came from, which is fascinating in itself.
And in many ways, it's the point
Mm.
because the meme itself is not what's important. It's the understanding of what it
It's a
represents.
language.
And that's why um, someone might, simply mention loss. And if you don't get what that means, you're out. You're out of that loop. Whereas
Mm-mm.
others will look at the picture and get immediately why loss is the component behind that statement. And then later on, you'll have someone post a completely irrelevant or unrelated looking photo. But if you know the meme, you see how it connects. It's crazy. So, bakit parang kasalanan ko?
I don't know, Nikki. You're supposed to be here, obviously. We miss working with you.
Syempre, nostalgia moment. Nick, remember when we first met? I'll never forget that.
Apparently, Nick didn't remember. So
Those 5 words you told me as the first thing. Okay, um, beyond brands, beyond commercials, of course, the entertainment industry tried their best to cash in on nostalgia as well.
mm-hmm.
And while many of us would lament about how, they're now just doing remakes and no one's making new things anymore, the fact is, the idea of doing remakes um, wasn't necessarily always just tied to nostalgia.
Mm-hmm.
um, in many instances, it was tied because one, um, it's a safer investment.
Yes, because you know that these elements came together
They already made you
and
money.
they made money.
So
Yes.
so even if it's a gamble to still do it again, I'd rather gamble on, let's say, Shakespeare, because Shakespeare, people know Shakespeare, and I know there will be people who watch Shakespeare, than a completely original story, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that. Then there is also the fact that you want to reintroduce it to a newer market.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of things about nostalgia, while it does target a market, so like now we have all these 80s and 90s shows now having their modern remakes to
Mm-hmm.
target those young ones who at this point in time have the money to spend. And then even beyond that, we now have the 2000, 2010 stuff now starting to have their own remakes because those kids before are now the ones who are earning money had it not been the pandemic. Um,
Yeah, I knew we were at a weird point when it's like he's the man, which is a remake of an older movie of
mm,
a similar concept. And like, oh my god, even this is getting a remake. So yeah, so I mean, it's a hard line to like figure out like which ones are. I mean, many play on nostalgia, but I think not all play on nostalgia. Others just do feel calculated.
Nick, it's five because it's bakit, ano ang kailangan mo. Of course, yung ano ang you truncated. So bakit, anong kailangan mo?
Wow, you really had to clarify this point. Good job. Okay, okay.
Sinulat kasi niya, ano kailangan mo? Okay. So I found a list that shows supposedly the first 10 remakes ever made.
Oh wow. Okay.
So first we have, it's foreign films, of course, the Lumiere brothers, Augustus and Louis, among the first filmmakers in history, They started making moving pictures in 1892. They patented an early film camera called the cinematograph,
Hmm.
and they had their first screening in 1895 to an audience of 200. So one of their first films was Party de Carte, which translates to card game,
Okay.
party of cards, I guess. Um, Also known as the Messers Lumiere at Cards. It's a 1 minute film that shows two people playing cards while a third watches them and a waiter brings wine.
Fascinating plot.
So of course they made a remake of that film later on as the technology got better. Then we have still stuff within that era, the waterer, or the sprinkler sprinkled. We have
Oh my
the
god, these are all ancient.
the bitter bit or the remake of La Ruse Aruse. And then because again, it's this one, the Kiss in the Tunnel, remade that same year.
As the kiss in the tunnel.
um, and then we have the Chimney Sweep and the Milner, which
Miller.
is a Miller, which is a remake after 3 years of the same title. We have oh wow, there's like 4 years. So it felt like a lot of let's redo it because we now have better technology.
Because look at the early days of film, and
Mhm.
then like you didn't like your first movie, you didn't just make a sequel, you redid it. But
So
then again, we're talking about 1 2 minute movies also.
yeah, so having gone through the entire list, none of them would fall under the stuff that we would count as remake.
So it's not so much no, it's not a nostalgia remake. It's a I can do better
Yeah.
remake. Okay.
Now, the sad thing about remakes is not all of them are nostalgia, as mentioned
Yeah,
earlier.
yeah.
And that's where it gets tricky when we start looking at popular media and trying to decide was that something trying to market on nostalgia or was that something simply banking on strong material?
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, the Transformers movies does feel like a nostalgia product. It felt for me it felt like they really knew, oh, this brand will have a lot of fans that will bite. And the reason for
Fans who are
that
now older.
is because the stories don't necessarily even connect to the original material.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why it feels for me like a nostalgia attack.
And if you watch the parallel development on the toy front,
Mm.
obviously Transformers is my life. They around the time of the movie, they officially created an imprint of toys specifically for the adult collector market.
Mm.
And all that line has been doing since it came out is to redo figures that were released in the original 1980s line over and over again, and it's
Mhm.
called Generations or whatever you want to call it now. But and this is the line I primarily collect, and I'm totally a sucker for it. And there are so many robots that are like either I bought them because I used to have a version of it in the
Mhm.
G1 days, or I always wanted it and now I have it. And then I feel, although it's a completely different toy, but I feel better. Like
Mhm.
I finally got myself a blank, and then I'm happy. It's weird. It's
Mhm.
weird. Okay. So yeah, I support the Transformers. It was a big, very calculated push across multiple lines.
Let's just jump real quickly back to marketing. So here are some examples of nostalgia marketing where they prove to be quite effective. Oh, this is the same article. Um, ah,
Yeah, you
yeah.
keep escaping it.
So we have Motorola Razer.
Yeah, okay.
So
Recreating a Razer with new tech was super like there is no practical reason to do this.
I was tempted to get one
I know. We talked about this,
because one
and
of my first phones, actually officially my second cell phone, was a Motorola Razer.
I wonder, like, could you have done that with the Nokia? Like would because I don't necessarily think people would clamor to have a 5110,
Yeah.
a modern quote unquote 5110. The styling, the shaping was just
I
wrong for
think
it.
if it were the phone, but then it opens into a touchscreen and all that, then that would have been a fun nostalgia item because it makes you think of the old one, but then it still gives you all the joy of the new one.
Yeah, of course they could have to also rely on Nokia still
Mhm.
being in the consumer market.
So
Okay.
Nintendo was another nostalgia product in the sense of they really did try to start releasing a lot of products calling back or harkening back to old stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Even as far as Super Mario Brothers now is even having um, throwback items officially with Lego and the like. Australian Tourism Board had a um, homage to Crocodile Dundee.
Mm.
Spotify,
I
uh,
rarely see Spotify ads. Okay, this is a US article.
it had a dragon spokesperson.
Oh, that was like Falcor.
Yes. So that was a
Falcor.
nostalgia attempt. Um, the others were not familiar with. Of course, Bob Ross had some sort of Adobe crossover marketing thing. But the documentary about Bob Ross will change your mind about that company.
Mm.
Nike also had nostalgia related marketing. Microsoft, they tried to connect to Tamagotchi, Oregon Trail, and other 90s stuff. Apple tried to touch on. Hmm, that's funny. Cookie Monster. I do not recall these.
Yeah, well, we don't see a lot of US ads.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh, you know what? The McDonald's Happy Meal anniversary set.
Yes, that one that had all the old toys coming out.
Yes, that was awesome. Although technically they were like revised versions of the old toys. Because I
Mm-mm.
know when I got okay, I only wanted the burger robot, and Toby made sure to get me the burger robot, and it was not exactly the same as the old burger robot,
Mm.
which is funny. They took out the sesame seeds for some reason, things like that. So, but the lure of it was clearly nostalgia, and I'm sure majority of the people who went for those Happy Meals were not kids. We're
Mm.
not, we're either parents pretending to buy them for their kids, or really just older people buying Happy Meals because they
Mm.
missed the toys as a kid, and that's nostalgia for you. Okay, so nostalgia. Was it the other article said it's not necessarily a good or a bad
Feeling.
emotion
Yeah.
feeling in itself, and then we talked about how there are benefits to it, maybe in terms of like the improving memory recall and the
Yes,
like.
Nick. No sesame.
But then like but then how do you balancing that, like we have personal nostalgia moments with friends and family, but then
Mm.
you have like entertainment, other companies trying to play on it.
Mm-hmm.
Then how are we supposed to feel about nostalgia in itself? Should we be wary every time, like, you find if you encounter marketing strategies that are clearly trying to tug at that part of your brain?
My personal feelings towards it is simply if they're trying to target me and they're doing it well, then I'll enjoy it.
Mm.
Because if it's meant to be something I'll consume and enjoy, then if they're doing a good job at it, why should I complain? Now, there is the other aspect wherein it's manipulative.
Mm-mm.
For example, when Stranger Things first came out, there's no denying there were a lot of nostalgia nods there.
Mm.
They had to set it in the 80s. They had to make sure there were all these little moments there.
Yeah, kids on bikes.
And I didn't mind. I enjoyed it. I was
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, this is like Goonies from way back. This is like, so it was fun. With the second Stranger Things season, it
Mm.
started to feel okay.
A
You're
little
trying
contrived.
hard.
Yeah.
You're really trying to make me think that it doesn't feel anymore like a celebration of the memory. It now felt more like, oh, we made lots of money with the first one. Let's see how much more we can squeeze out. And that's why I'm not. Um, I don't blame them for trying, but if they don't do it well, I'll notice.
And I think that's like the story of marketing
Mhm.
entirely. Like we we all people generally say they don't like ads. It gets in the way of whatever they're watching or
Mhm.
wanting to enter or whatever. But really, people just want ads to be good.
And I think the best ones are the ones that fade away, meaning you don't recognize it as an ad. You just
Yes.
recognize it as something you enjoyed going through.
Mm.
So, a product that was targeting your nostalgia, you won't even think of it as a product. You'll think of it as, oh my God, I have this and this reminds me of that. That's it. And that's a successful case of marketing nostalgia.
So
Um,
Mitch first shares
yeah.
when she used to write for a geek blog, nostalgia articles have good numbers.
Hmm.
Like one that was a feature of The Voice Thailand's Got Talent of a guy singing the Dragon Ball theme, and
Hmm.
naturally people would go nuts over that. And then notice finally the flying tongue behind you with the fly. Toby's
See, I
very
told
happy
you.
for that. Okay, okay.
So, let's talk about what we feel were nostalgia attempts that we didn't like.
Oh, that's hard.
So
Okay.
I mentioned Stranger Things.
The
Stranger
second
Things.
season
Yeah,
of
the
Stranger
second
Things.
season. Um, um, the the second It remake felt like a failed nostalgia attempt.
In what way?
Um, because I'm not sure if they really wanted to celebrate the material, given how they tried to tell the story. Um,
But okay, I don't think it was ever really a nostalgia play, but it was I want to make a modern adaptation of it.
mm,
And I feel that way only because there's a book.
mhm,
So they can always argue I adapted the book. I didn't adapt
the movie.
the previous movie, the
Mhm.
previous dare I say TV movie.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what I think was a very deliberate nostalgia play, which didn't necessarily play out well, was the He-Man Revelations. The marketing for He-Man
Mm,
Revelations was super
nostalgia based.
super nostalgia bait. It's like I'm going to show you the power fantasy that a lot of guys loved growing up as
Mhm.
little boys. We were playing a power rock ballad over the whole thing, and then it turns out to
A
be
new story.
an entirely new story. You
Which
barely get He-Man,
and
and
then
you're following Tila.
and the new story wasn't bad,
It's not a bad
but they
story.
should have just marketed it as that.
Yeah, so it felt like a bait and switch. And then in the
Yes.
groups, in the Facebook groups that I'm in, oh my god, people were so angry.
Mm-hmm.
People were so upset because it did feel like they were sold this but got this.
And that's the same thing with the recent Star Wars movie posters,
Mm.
wherein all the posters were showing the big three as the main cast with lightsabers, all in battle poses. But then when we see the movies, you know, one of them just kept running around yelling someone's name. The other one was always separated from them, and the last one had the lightsaber. But the marketing did not match that. We we were told a completely different story by the
Mm-mm.
marketing, which tried to, touch on nostalgia hopes. We're in, oh, we get to see Jedi fighting again. We'll get to see three of them with lightsabers, but that's not what happened.
Okay, I have a question for like what was that
So
movie?
Jed mentions, hello, Thundercats Roar plays nostalgia very well. Jed, would you say it was a successful use of nostalgia, or would you say it felt like manipulative?
Hmm. Okay. How about Super 8? Remember Super 8? DJ Abrams Super 8?
I
Which was not distinctly like based on an old story, but it had a lot of the hallmarks of like
Yeah,
a classic Spielberg 80s Amblin Entertainment production.
sadly, Super 8, I don't remember it.
Wow. Okay.
Despite watching it, despite being a Spielberg thing, I don't remember it. And I think that for me already shows that maybe successful nostalgia because I went to see it, but it didn't leave a good memory.
Or at
Uh,
least not necessarily didn't leave a good one. I guess
yeah.
didn't leave a strong one.
Jed mentions he found that the Thundercats Roar was a success, and we have to watch that. We haven't found the courage to risk it because we were afraid how different it is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Admittedly, that's one of the things about nostalgia as well is when something looks too different, you start worrying if you will risk enjoying it.
Oh, oh.
And we felt that with Lower Decks.
Yes.
With
Yes.
Lower Decks,
Star Trek
despite
Lower Decks.
despite knowing it was the fantastic people behind Rick and Morty, we were scared that oh my gosh, what will they do to the show? How weird will it get? And yet we are now realizing that there is so much love for the brand, for the universe, in that production that the every episode is oozing with reasons to love it more.
Okay, one to be fair on the Thundercats Roar situation is that the Transformers fandom went through the same thing with the
Mhm.
Transformers animated series when it
Mhm.
first came out. The visual look was super different. It was this big, blocky, clumsy,
Mhm.
whatever. But over time, that show had some of the deepest cuts and callbacks to
Mhm.
classic G1 elements, and
Mm.
so it became a super nostalgia trap for
Mm.
like G1 purists who. But when you watch Transformers animated closely, there are all these little Easter eggs
Mm.
that call back. Ooh, which I feel now we should talk about in the same way Easter eggs as they play to nostalgia.
Mm.
So Jed's a little iffy on the Matrix Resurrection thing,
He
and that's
also
okay.
shares that he was doubtful at first because the Steven Universe treatment of Thundercats Roar,
Mm.
but then it worked for him. Mitch shares that the failed movie remake was Total Recall. That would be the what was his name?
Colin
Colin Farrell.
Farrell. Yeah,
Yeah,
and I think that was not a strong nostalgia play. It was, but definitely a commercial decision remake. Like,
yeah,
let's see if we can get more life from this series.
yeah. And again, this is only because we're defining nostalgia as trying to recapture the feel of the original
Mm,
and not tell a new story.
yeah.
So in the same token, the Mummy with Tom Cruise was not a nostalgia play on the Brendan
Oh
Fraser The
yeah, just a
Mummy.
totally different
It
thing.
was more a let's try to do a The Mummy Mission Impossible and see if it will click.
Okay, okay. What are other things that we like that uh, nostalgia
Well, I
wise?
think something that we'll have to admit is a nostalgia bait product, despite also coming from good source material, are the Disney remakes.
Oh yeah, well I don't. Yeah,
Not the
I
new ones.
the live action
So
adaptations.
not Cruella, not the like, but the live action adaptations.
Mm.
Because they do try to hit you with those, remember this moment, but look live. Um, and then they do try to still inject a little bit of something different. Like this time, what's his name? LeFou will have a backstory or stuff like that. But I'm very divided by those works.
Oh, I'm not divided at all. I don't like them.
No, I'm divided because I'm happy that they are trying to create these new versions of the story. Only because, let's face it, there's a lot of perspectives now that see animated stuff as for kids.
Hmm.
So to have it in live action offers the opportunity for people who don't like cartoons to consider watching it and connecting with it.
But I feel like it just runs counter to what was sort of the older sort of Disney brand, which was we're timeless. That these are timeless stories that no
True.
matter what age, you can still enjoy the original Sleeping Beauty
That's
because
true.
it's a powerful story on its own. And this was like this was the whole mystique around the Disney Vault hiding videos for a while and
Mm,
right so that
yes.
used to be their big marketing push, and then now it's like, yes, we love our IPs, but then we need to make them modern also.
Mm.
So I don't know. I don't have great feelings for that. Um, nostalgia feels yung family computer. Oh, I
Mm.
think yeah, re-releasing all those consoles,
Yeah.
even but with more modern technology. So then it was crazy. Like the console itself contained the games.
Now, in terms of hobbyists, um, we'll have to have a brief moment. Oh no, I lost the tab. We have to have a brief moment to talk about the retro market.
In what sense?
Um, there are circles and communities that are still super devoted to retro gaming, to old
Mm.
school stuff. So they don't care about the PS5. They're not looking to play MMORPGs,
Mm-hmm.
but they will, dig and search for those original cartridges for the Nintendo. They will dig through parts and fix this old Sega Saturn because they want to play the game the way it was meant to be played.
Mm.
And in many cases, um, perhaps fueled by nostalgia or perhaps also fueled by fandom, a large part of this is because it's a dying market.
Mm-mm.
With many games, um, backward compatibility does not exist.
Yeah.
And beyond that, there is no clear trove of these games. So, like, I know online there was a local guy who made an effort to try to find all the old Flash games that were
Mm.
made by local designers and developers.
Well, that's nice.
And then he created one website to try to store them all.
Okay. Oh, Mitch brings up a good one. The vinyl market.
Mm.
People who like LPs, and the fact that people. Okay, then so there was people who were keeping turntables alive and still celebrating that it sounds different on vinyl and it's
Mm.
the music is so much different. But then, how do you feel about music artists releasing their new music also with an LP release,
Mm-mm.
which is then that feels that so there's definitely the retro hobbyist market, but then a clear nostalgia marketing push because then I can get the likes of the new Lady Gaga thing on vinyl, which is
Well, I
like
think the ultimate thing about that is that um, there's that perception of quality,
mm-hmm,
which they sort of put in a opposing scale with technology. The same problem used to exist with photography,
mm,
wherein you had this very strong film is better, and then digital photography reached a point wherein it's even greater than
it's just too
yeah.
convenient.
And well, the film photography market nearly collapsed. Like it's now super specialty.
It's super hobbyist now.
And in terms of music, that still exists. Instead of artists, you still have those purisms or purists wherein, if you're not using actual paints, you're not painting. And um, so there's some level of
Oh,
nostalgia, but there is also some level of perceived quality, which becomes a factor.
and yeah, and then you have that same battle going on now with movies must be seen in theaters
Mhm.
versus watching at home, streaming and whatnot. And it's an interesting debate that is
Although
ongoing.
that one I feel is close to why theater will always be different
Mm-hmm.
from movies. There is a fundamental difference in how the media is interacted with. Because it's one thing to say vinyl sounds better than digital music, but then you could argue digital music can be tweaked to be, those weird
The
scratches
noise
and sounds can be
artifacts
there
can
as
be
well. So
reintroduced.
you can do that. Compare that naman to watching on a TV and watching on a screen that's practically 3 stories tall. Unless you have a house that can broadcast it at 3 stories tall,
Mm-hmm.
that is a very different experience. And likewise, in as much as movies might be awesome enough to have 3D and the like, to see the actors on stage performing it real time, non-stop, except
Mm-hmm.
for the recess, is still that's part of the experience. It's not just because they're doing Phantom of the Opera again, but they're doing it while dodging the props and changing backstage to rush back up. It's that whole thing.
And I'm not
Mm.
obviously I'm not against it. I mean, I miss the theater experience, but I wonder what it's gonna be like because it's definitely I feel like it's growing into a critical argument at the moment. The
Yeah,
longer that we are denied the opportunity to go back to public spaces.
yeah.
I mean, like if we're gonna live in, you know, we may not even reach a post-pandemic world. It's
Hmm.
just going to be a COVID is everywhere world.
Hmm.
Then will we ever have big social events anymore?
Or in the near future, at
Yeah,
least.
or at least in the next few years, then is it justifiable that as a movie purist, sorry, until your theaters reopen, you're not getting any new movies,
Hmm.
which is a weird thing to do too. So things.
Yeah, I even wonder if it will reach a point wherein uh, the theater industry is forced to shut down only because it's really hard with the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And then a few years later, someone has the brilliant idea to let's have a big space where you can all watch from a large screen. Because no one's doing it in the last 10 years or something like
Oh
that.
my god, it makes me sad to think it might be a 10 year thing.
Because it is sort of like what happens now when you have, well, prior to the pandemic, diba, you'll have this group and they're like, oh, we can have this ganyan ganyan and we'll all play music live in a circle and anyone can play music and they'll now call it the special event, but that just used to be a fiesta in the past or the, you know, You know how marketing will claim something that's not commonly done and
Mm-mm.
suddenly make it look like they came up with it.
Something to think about.
Ay. Okay, going back to nostalgia. Let's go back to nostalgia. What would you share as examples of really good nostalgia moments? So you were watching this or you were going through this and then it had that, oh, this really makes me think of that, or it really captured that, and I love how it really connected to that.
I don't know if it's nostalgia per se because it is a solo experience.
Mhm.
So it's not something I shared. It's not something that involved other people. Going back to the earlier definition.
Yeah.
But it was definitely very emotionally evocative. For me, it was like the end of the first Sam Raimi Spider-Man movie
Mm-hmm.
where you see Peter all frustrated because this has happened, and then he's nobody else knows he's Spider-Man, and
Mm-hmm.
it's raining, and it was just a very classic like Spider-Man moment.
Mm-hmm.
And in that moment, in the theater, again I had a crappy seat, and I was sitting apart from my family, um, because it was like I had to take the one seat because
Yeah.
everybody else was clustered, and I just suddenly was all this flood of memories of reading Spider-Man
Mm.
comics, and always him getting to that point. And so in that sense, the movie was very emotionally powerful for me, even though,
Mm-hmm.
and it wasn't even like a key part of the story. It was literally the end scene.
Mm-hmm.
But and I nearly cried
Mm-hmm.
in the theater because it made me feel that powerfully about it. And but it distinctly made me think about my years of reading Spider-Man comics. So it's just funny. It's just funny. So it's sort of nostalgia. Maybe it's just an emotional
Mm-hmm.
thing, but that worked for me.
Okay.
I told you the story.
Yeah.
Why are you no, Baduy?
Oh, because we're Baduy, right? Mitch shares nostalgia moments. Eating those Pinoy candies with surprise
Which we
toys.
still can't remember the name of the one I wanted.
Yeah.
The fruit one.
Playing with plastic balloon. Mm, yeah. I remember I used to have a lot of bursts of nostalgia whenever we'd go to Green Hills.
Mm,
And there would be that
Regina.
shop, Regina's, and I'd be like, what you call it? Oh my gosh. And then, uh, oh my gosh, what was the name of that other one? It's in my head.
The annoying orange one.
There's the orange candy, but then there's the balloon roll up. It was the flattened fruit strips. Airheads.
No, I don't think that's Airheads. I'm
Was
not sure.
double checking. Yung kasama ng nerds and stuff. Yeah, it was Airheads.
Mm.
Yeah.
So Mitch, of course, talks about nostalgia, looking at old photos. I think when you say the word nostalgia, in the same way that when you say describe empathy, you get the weird shoe analogy.
Mhm.
Nostalgia, I feel like you more often than not get the old
Yes, the
photo
candy tape.
album concept. And I wonder how that feels now for
Who
people
don't have a concept of a
who
photo
don't have
album.
physical photo albums.
I worry about it because nga, the way memories and moments are consumed now are very different.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so for our time, there were photo albums, and then you had, of course, the subset of the scrapbookers
Mm.
who were not content with just keeping photos, but pieces
Decorating and
pieces
yeah,
of what happened that day,
weaving history
the
into the
receipt,
scrapbook. Yeah.
writing notes about what happened. Diba? So it was a lot of trying to document things, and in many ways, these same things are what's going on now with Instagram and all this and that for certain people.
Mm-mm.
Because for others, they use it to literally curate a story they want to tell,
Yes.
and it's not the records of events that are happening. And you then have that intersection of, so what happens when they look for memories?
Mm. That's a concern.
And even more interestingly for me is that for many who curate their content, they throw away, diba? So parang they have seasons. Na season 1, this is my image. And then I start my season 2, I'll start deleting this.
Yeah, I know there are people who like reboot their Instagram entirely.
Because they want to make sure only the new ones are there. And that does make me think about when they removed it, I hope it's just offline, but they still have copies. But I don't know. The fact that digital photography allows you to have thousands without effort has also made it feel that it's less important to have specific photos.
Mm.
Whereas I remember you go out with friends, you take that one photo with that camera, you have it printed, and then you're now literally, this is the only photo we have because we don't have the negative and blah, 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 blah. Or worse, you took 20 and 19 of them were overexposed.
I have literally kept overexposed photos,
Mm.
like because I still kind of know what happened, and
Mm.
like I still keep them. So, and I get that, and that's why I often like when 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 people talk about me taking pictures, and I take a lot of pictures, obviously, um, and they'll it always segues to that question. So you're into photography, and then I don't think so,
Mm.
because I've never been into the the technical aspects of composition,
Mm.
and like I don't do manual
Mm-mm.
settings and all that. But I like documenting events.
Mm-mm.
And so I always like, so I think I started telling people I started telling people that I consider myself more as a photo documentarian than a photographer,
Mm-mm.
because I like to capture what happened. So I love stolen shots of people, even though people hate it.
Mm-mm.
I like trying to set the stage. I like big crowd shots. I have like on certain Obar nights, I'd hold up my camera and I would just take photos of the crowd
Mm-mm.
and like move around. And then I have all these snippets of, oh look, it's Kanyan, and I capture the moment. And I like that.
Mm-mm.
And then I put so much effort into cataloging what I've taken photos of. Hence, everything is in an album and a date. And then with the advent of things like Picasa, which became Google Photos, then all the more like I have these powerful
Mm-mm.
tools to help me index stuff. Um, so yeah, and I like so I like looking back now, and I have that digital thing, and I think it still has a similar nostalgia power around it. I I
Mm-hmm.
I won't overly romanticize the power of old photo albums, but I love old photo
Mm-hmm.
albums. Um, but yeah, but I like the accessibility. I like being able to cross index,
Yeah.
because we've had cases where I don't realize I had met someone years before,
Yes.
but it turns out I literally have a photo of them,
Mm-hmm.
and they posed for the photo. So it's like,
Or we like have photos with people we knew separately and now they're together.
mm,
Or the other way around, we met them and knew one, but then become closer to the other, not realizing sila nun. Stuff like that.
Jed saying he's taking more home videos because of the pandemic. Yeah,
And of course, Jed also jokes watching old Baduy Pride episodes in 2030.
maybe. I mean, like, and that's the thing, like, because like so much of my photo efforts were tied to events.
Mm.
Then it did reach a point in quarantine. They're like, oh my god, we're not taking photos of ourselves.
Yeah.
We're not adding to the cycle, and so yeah. Then then you'll see like I make deliberate efforts for Toby and I to take photos every now and then, just to
So,
like to remember who we are.
so Tristan brings us to a good closing topic.
Mm.
And that is, when does nostalgia turn into holding on too much to the past?
I think um when nostalgia as a shared social experience, as a story moment, as a bonding thing, I think that's still healthy.
Mhm.
But then if it turns into I want that life again, or I
Mhm.
want to recreate that moment, or worse, I only want to live in that moment, then I feel that definitely feels unhealthy,
Mhm.
because the past is the past, and
Yeah.
certain things just can't happen again.
I think on a related direction, I think it's unhealthy when you are ignoring where you are now. and all you do is keep reposting the old photos, keep lamenting how they were the best times in your life, um, and then you're totally discounting anything you're doing now. Because there are people who do get stuck in
Yeah.
that rut.
There are
And
people like they feel like they're total failures now,
Mhm.
and they like themselves better before, and then they either are overly critical of themselves, even on social media today, or are in a weird time warp where they only keep talking about their
Mm.
past self, and it's a bit concerning sometimes when that happens.
Mhm.
You know? And it's like it's subtle because it's a fine line between also the curation activity, because there
Yeah.
are some people who are not necessarily obsessed with the past, but they only want to show this version of themselves.
Mhm.
We had a friend before who was super like, oh my god, he's using the same photos, he posts the same photos over and over again, and
This was
we
across a decade, and we were still seeing the same
yeah
photos
we and
cropping up.
and we are the friends who would like make fun of it and like,
Yeah,
oh,
we you know we reached out to him.
we reached out, but I'd also like laugh and call it out in
Yeah.
public and like, oh, this one again, So yeah.
So Jed also shares, when you don't get excited to make new things. That's true.
Mm.
There's also the aspect of um, when it becomes a standard that everything has to be compared by. So um, I know some people who feel certain shows are like immaculate and nothing will be better than it, no matter what happens. Um, Sometimes they're purists, original series, nothing else in Star Trek is really Star Trek. Only this was Star Trek.
Mm.
And others are purists in role playing games and comics and the like. And it's sad when you get caught in that because it's a conscious denial of what else you can experience.
Yeah, and it's like saying that everything else, I mean, without even trying it or learning about
Mhm.
other versions or iterations, you're dismissing them all as bad because they are not the one thing you like,
Mhm.
which is sad. I mean, like, ultimately, it's a choice. We can't stop people from doing this,
Mhm.
and if that's where their happiness lies, sure. But it is definitely a very closed-minded
And it
mentality.
doesn't feel healthy.
Mm, mm, mm. Because I mean, if you're not experiencing new things, if you're not creating new things,
Mhm.
celebrating new things, if you're not moving, and you're stuck attempting to recreate a moment or a particular period in your life, it definitely doesn't feel healthy. It doesn't feel like it's sustainable. It it is you consciously denying the even just the possibility of finding new things to like.
Yes.
So I don't. I hope that I would never wish that fate on other people. I mean, like uh, when I talk about how I define the word geek, right? I always say geek is about passion.
Mhm.
Geek is about being passionate about something. It's not necessarily only about fantasy things or science
Yes.
fiction things. Or you can be a geek about basketball. You can be a
Mhm.
geek about cooking, about plants, about
About Miss
cats,
Universe.
about Miss Universe. So people geek out about many different
Mhm.
things, but then there's a particular stigma around the label. And we're in a time when we say it's like the age of the geek. It's the age of like hyper celebration of whatever your fandom is.
Mhm.
And I super embrace that, and I really feel sad when people feel like they don't have something to celebrate on that level.
Mhm.
Mm.
And then it gets weird because when you ask them why, they'll say, "I'm not sure if this one is good. I don't know who to ask."
Mm-mm,
And you're
mm-mm.
like, "But it's your call."
Yeah, if you like it, then it's
Mhm.
great. That's your thing.
Yeah.
So what can you do?
So I think that's a good way to wrap up the ups and downs and dangers and celebrations of nostalgia.
Mm-hmm.
And that means this is the last episode for this week.
For N week,
No specific reason. It
it
just
just happened.
we're always open for more ideas, of course. But for this episode, we thank you so much for joining us this Friday night, and we hope you'll join us again next time.
For questions or suggestions for future episodes, you can fill up the Google form at bit.ly Baduy Pride Ideas. We'll get back to the suggestion queue. We just needed things that started with N, and we didn't have a lot of them in the queue other than nuts. You can follow us on Twitter, Altobino Shade, RG Sunico.
You can also check out our blog, baduypray.com, for all the previous episodes and stuff about us.
Feel free to continue the conversation in the comments below and let us know, what do you think about nostalgia? Do you like that feeling? Do you celebrate that as well? Or it's like, nothing, it's just marketing, I would love to hear your thoughts. And be sure to subscribe for notifications, whether on Facebook or YouTube, so you don't miss our next live stream. Once again, I'm Rocky.
And I'm Toby.
And this is
Baduy
Baduy Pride. Good night, everyone.